Imagine this. You're a Viking in 893 and raiders are closing in. You grab your child and vanish, straight into the earth. Because beneath your home lies a secret Viking hideout, and survival depends on it. We often imagine Vikings as bold warriors, axe in one hand, horn in the other, charging headfirst into battle. But when it came to protecting their families, livestock, and communities, they played an entirely different game, a silent game, a game of shadows, earth, and patience. Their enemies saw the surface, because the Vikings didn't just conquer, they endured. And to do that, they needed places to disappear at a moment's notice. That's where these underground hideouts came in, and the reasons they existed. Oh, they go deeper than you think. So let's set the record straight. Viking hideouts weren't just for war. They weren't just panic holes you'd jump into when someone yelled raid from the lookout post. These places were lifelines. Picture the Viking Age like a game of chess, but instead of a board, you've got harsh winters, enemy clans, famines, and unpredictable kings breathing down your neck. Hideouts were how you stayed 3 moves ahead. If a rival clan decided your cattle looked tasty, or a feuding warlord wanted your village torched just to make a point, you couldn't always stand and fight. Sometimes disappearing was the smarter option. And the Vikings? They were smart, much smarter than history gives them credit for. These shelters were used for all kinds of reasons: escaping sudden raids, protecting sacred items or treasure, hiding hostages, or even just surviving a particularly brutal winter without being seen. Some hideouts were temporary, meant for a day or two until danger passed. Others, fully livable structures that people could stay in for weeks, even months. Think hobbit holes, but darker, colder, and built for survival, not comfort. They were often located right under everyday structures, under homes, under barns, beneath storage sheds. From the surface, they looked like nothing. But inside, hidden rooms, carved walls, secret exits. Some were so well constructed, you wouldn't even know someone was beneath your feet unless you fell through the trapdoor yourself. But let's talk about something that really shows off the Viking brainpower: how they actually chose where to dig these hideouts. Because this wasn't some random hole-in-the-ground situation. No Viking was out there with a shovel saying, "Hey, this looks like a good spot." These were calculated, strategic placements. They thought like predators and prey. Every hideout was hidden with such insane precision, it makes modern camouflage look sloppy. First, they scouted the terrain like pros. Rolling hills, thick forests, rocky outcrops. Anything that could naturally conceal an opening was prime real estate. Vikings knew how to use the landscape like a cloak. A boulder here, a mossy patch there, a small ditch that led to something way deeper. Some entrances were placed in bogs or beside cliffs where the natural hazards would deter most intruders. Others were built under dense foliage, where shadows did most of the work. And in snow-covered regions, they'd dig narrow entry tunnels with removable turf caps. Once inside, the entrance was invisible, even from a few feet away. And here's the next-level move. They often built the entrances in places no one would ever want to step. Animal pens, muddy fields, near dung heaps. Because nothing says, "Don't come here," like a puddle of cow mess. Some were even buried beneath kitchens or storage cellars, so if a house was ransacked, the invaders would never think to check beneath the fire pit. The brilliance here? These weren't just hiding places, they were psychological weapons. The better the hideout blended into its surroundings, the less chance it would ever be found, and the less it was found, the more powerful it became. Now, once they picked the perfect spot, the Vikings didn't just start digging like moles with a death wish. They had a plan. These underground hideouts were architectural puzzles, crafted with intention, secrecy, and some straight-up savage engineering. And remember, they were doing this without modern tools, blueprints, or Google searches. All they had was experience, instinct, and an ancestral understanding of the land. And somehow, that was enough to create underground hideaways so cleverly built, they still stump archaeologists today. First off, the entrance had to be nearly invisible. Turf trapdoors, stone arrangements, anything to blend perfectly with the landscape. You could walk right over one and never know it was there. But once inside, things got clever fast. Tunnels were narrow, twisting, and deliberately confusing. designed to throw off intruders in total darkness. One wrong turn and you'd be stuck or going in circles. Deeper in, the space often opened into a larger chamber, just big enough for a family and maybe some livestock. Wooden beams held up the ceiling, stone walls kept out moisture, and moss was packed into cracks for insulation. And in some hideouts, they added secret features: false walls, storage pits, hidden alcoves. Think Viking panic room meets escape artist hideaway. Every inch was planned with precision. They even accounted for airflow. You couldn't light a fire or breathe in there without some way for smoke and stale air to escape. So what did they do? They built hidden ventilation shafts, tiny channels carved through the earth or up through trees, masked with leaves, bark, or stone caps. From above, they looked like rabbit holes. From below, they were lifelines. That's how good these guys were. They could light a fire, cook a meal, and stay warm without anyone above ground ever seeing a single puff of smoke. That's not just survival, that's stealth on a legendary level. And here's the part that really blows people's minds. These hideouts weren't just technically impressive, they were livable. We're talking real day-to-day survival down there, not some curled up in the dirt type situation. Imagine crawling into a space no taller than a crouch, cold air brushing your neck, and then finding a room arranged with stone seating, carved niches for storage, and soot-blackened ceilings from old fires. This was no accident. The Vikings knew they might have to stay hidden for days or even weeks, so they designed these spaces for exactly that. Inside, the floors were often packed earth or laid with stone slabs to stay dry. Some hideouts even had rudimentary drainage systems, angled floors or hidden channels that let rainwater flow out instead of pooling inside. And if you think that's advanced, wait till you hear this. In certain hideouts, archaeologists have found signs of light-proof doorways. Basically, double entry points or layered barriers to make sure that if someone lit a fire or used a torch, no light would leak out through the entrance and give away the hideout's position. That's next-level defensive design, especially considering they had no electric lights to help them see in the dark. Cooking inside these underground dens was done carefully, using low, smokeless fires fueled by dried moss, dung, or twigs. And to prevent the place from filling with smoke, they'd keep the fire low and position it near the hidden ventilation shafts. Food, dried meat, root vegetables, nuts, things that could last for weeks without spoiling. And for warmth, they'd line the walls with animal hides or wool and sleep bundled under thick furs. Soundproofing? Oh, they had that covered too, literally. They would pack moss, turf, and even wool into the cracks to muffle every sound. A crying baby, a whispered conversation, the clink of a blade, all hidden under layers of earth and silence. Living in one of these hideouts was probably no one's first choice. It was cramped, damp, and eerily quiet. But when the choice was that, or getting caught and slaughtered, you bet the whole village squeezed in without complaint. These spaces weren't just hideouts, they were survival cocoons. And the Vikings wrapped themselves in them with the same grit they brought to every battlefield. But not all hideouts were small, cramped dens tucked under farmhouses. Some of them, they were straight-up military masterpieces. We're talking complex tunnel systems, multi-room layouts, and strategic escape hatches that made these places more than just shelters. They were defensive fortresses carved underground. These weren't made in a hurry either. Some of these larger hideouts took serious manpower and coordination to build, and the result was a structure that could outwit raiders, delay attackers, and protect entire communities in times of crisis. In Iceland, for example, archaeologists have uncovered tunnel networks that stretch from one building to another, some running beneath entire farm complexes. Imagine a Viking homestead with a secret underground path connecting the main house, the barn, and the granary. If invaders attacked one building, the family could slip underground and reappear in another before the raiders even noticed they were gone. That's not just clever, that's warfare chess, played in 3 dimensions. Some of these hideouts even had built-in lookouts. Not towers, mind you, but cleverly placed spy holes and disguised periscopes using angled shafts and mirrors. From the safety of underground, a Viking could peek at the surrounding land, track enemy movements, or even signal to allies using reflected light. Other systems included quick-release panels or hidden exits camouflaged with branches and animal hides. If attackers did manage to breach the main entrance, the residents could escape through a back tunnel and vanish into the woods. And then there were the traps. Oh yes, the Vikings didn't play fair when it came to defending their hideouts. Some entries were rigged with pits, collapsing passages, or even dead ends designed to confuse or trap invaders. These weren't just passive bunkers, they were active defense zones, built to buy time, slow enemies down, and turn the underground into hostile territory for anyone who wasn't welcome. So while Viking warriors fought with axes and swords above ground, the real war of survival was often being waged beneath their feet. These hideouts were extensions of Viking strategy, silent, invisible, and devastatingly effective. And here's where things get downright eerie, because for centuries, a lot of these underground hideouts were completely forgotten. Some were rediscovered by accident, a collapsed field, a farmer's plow hitting stone, or a curious archaeologist following a strange dip in the earth. Sites in places like Iceland, Norway, and Sweden have turned up everything from soot-blackened stones to charred grain, hinting at desperate last meals. One hideout even had melted metal fused into the floor, suggesting it was attacked and set ablaze, used not as a shelter, but as a final stand. What archaeologists found wasn't just dirt and rock. It was the story of people surviving when they had every reason to give up. Tools left behind, fire pits still packed with ash, animal bones, and burnt timber. All silent witnesses to the moments when entire families vanished below ground and waited out death. These weren't myths, they were real. And the people who built them weren't just warriors. They were planners, builders, survivors. So the next time someone says the Vikings were just wild, axe-swinging marauders, tell them this: they also mastered the art of hiding in plain sight. Smash that like button if Viking ingenuity blew your mind, and subscribe for more hidden history brought to light.